The gentlewoman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker and my colleagues, with every decade that passes, the middle class has faced higher and higher prices at the pump. Meanwhile, the world's 5 biggest oil companies have reported record profits year after year. Between 2001 and 2011, the 5 biggest oil companies made more than $1 trillion in profit. Despite these record profits, the majority continues to put the wishes of big oil before the needs of the middle class. Instead of balancing our nation's budget by closing tax loopholes on big oil, they have repeatedly told the middle class that they should sacrifice the programs on which they rely to live. Twice the majority has passed the Ryan budget, which would end Medicare as America knows it. And in its place, seniors, and picture this for your mother or your most elderly relatives, in its place, they would be given a health care voucher and sent into the marketplace on their own to find health care on their own.
The gentleman is correct. The House will be in order. Gentlelady can proceed.
Meanwhile, they work hard and we call all the time for votes, not to protect the billion-dollar big oil subsidies from any cuts, but again to protect our vanishing middle class. I think this approach is not only wrong-headed and will hurt us all, but it's morally wrong. A year ago, Speaker Boehner told 60 Minutes that ending subsidies for big oil companies is certainly something we should be looking at. I couldn't agree more. He continued, we're in a time when the federal government is short on revenues. We need to control spending, but we need to have revenues to keep the government moving, and they ought to be paying their fair share. Speaker Boehner was absolutely right, and this is the time to do it. By voting in support of my amendment, the whole House will finally have the opportunity to demand that big oil pays its fair share. Last year, the 5 biggest oil companies in the world made a combined record profit of $137 billion. And during that same time, thousands of middle-class Americans slid out of the middle class and into poverty. While ExxonMobil was busy using at least 20 tax shelters to lower their tax rate to a mere 13%, over 20 million people were living on less than $9,000 a year. That's not America. I think we need to balance our budget by asking those who have benefited the most simply to pay a fair share, not by taking from those who have the least. Our country was never based on that. With my amendment, the world's biggest oil companies would begin to pay their fair share. They would be barred from receiving new drilling leases until they gave up their oil and gas subsidies. In addition, my amendment would require each big oil company that obtains an oil and gas lease to use American-made products. This hire American workers who are more than ready and willing to do the job. This amendment will do much of what we've been striving to do this whole term. The amendment will not kill the bill nor send it back to committee. If we approve this amendment, the bill will immediately proceed to final passage. It's up to us, ladies and gentlemen. We can return home this weekend and tell our constituents that finally we voted for the middle class, which is what they want us. We can turn our backs on this opportunity before us and go home and explain why this Congress would vote to gut Medicare but won't ask big oil to pay their fair share. I urge my colleagues to support the motion to recommit and stand up for the middle class and the suffering Americans. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman yields back. For what purpose?